I am Jason with Defend. I am part of our management team, and I'm going to be speaking about Australia's move to ban social media for under 16. Under 16-year-olds in just 1 year will not be able to set up an account on places like TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. So that's what I get from the media reports. But what we're going to do today is two things. We're going to discuss this and see what people are saying, and then we're going to break down the legislation. So if you want to join the conversation, please be respectful and get in the chat session here if you want to have your voice heard. If you want to even join me on the live stream, that is possible as well. It is on a Zoom call, so you'd need to have Zoom set up. And generally, I want to kind of take this one step at a time. This may be a fairly long live stream. And I'll start by just prefacing by saying I am a parent and I understand the nuance of protecting children on the internet. I also understand how difficult it can be to create a social media platform that complies with every single law around the world. I can tell you that just our legal team alone is tracking hundreds of pieces of legislation in multiple jurisdictions around the world, and it is a headache because we're building. So if you don't know, our nonprofit, our mission is to reduce risks for children and vulnerable people online. And one of the ways that we're doing that is education. So we want to teach people about where they're at risk online and give them the tools to better protect themselves. On the other side of our organization, we push for changes like what is happening in Australia. And then on the other hand, we are now building our own technology. We are building our own social media platform called 65 Square. And if you don't know it, it should be linked in the description box below. And I encourage you to go check it out. It's not on the App Store yet. Our our dating app is going to be launched first. Our dating app is the world's healthiest and safest experience, and it will have some remarkable features to help people connect better. But this is not that. This is not about our dating app today. This is about what's happening in Australia. And what's happening in Australia is very serious. Um, we we're monitoring this very closely, but I can tell you that we want to align ourselves with policy that is very similar to what Australia is doing. But on one hand, it's very difficult to support this 100%. What the problem, so the problems with social media don't just stem from someone's age. So let's be clear. Someone is at risk on social media if they are on social media and they have an account and they can communicate with others. And they're at risk on social media even if they don't have an account and they're not signed in. Think about how harmful content can be here on YouTube. And you don't even need to be logged in to an account. You don't need to have verification for YouTube to have an account and to view content and to be exposed to risk. But what we really want to support as an organization is a reasonable approach to a variety of different positions because an outright ban is not something that is helpful for anybody. So let's take a look at what CBC is saying right now. They actually had a chance. They have correspondents that have chatted with some teenagers, I guess, in Australia, and that's where we're going to kind of start this discussion off. What I will say is that I've seen some of this already. Um, I've personally been doing a little bit of research into this, but I want to kind of keep an open mind. Um, so keep in mind that I'm a father and I'm also an administrator of a nonprofit, and our mission is to reduce risks for people online. So let's come at that from this perspective. And let's see what, first of all, CBC is saying. I'm going to kind of probably cut in here a little bit.
In other news, Australia has now done something that no other country has been able to do. Its Senate today approved a law that bans children under the age of 16 from using social media.
So this seems to be true. And one of the scary things about this, I'm going to put up another window here. One of the scary things about this is that and for whatever reason, either their website is not working very well, or people are just flooding onto Australia's government of Australia's website. But it took 15 minutes just to load this one page, and then to get the actual act that was passed was even longer. So this is causing a storm on the internet right now. And one of the scary things, though, that I note from other newscasts that I've already heard about is how fast that this went through the legislative process. And that's scary for me for one main thing. And we can see here it was introduced and read as a bill for the first time November 21st of this year. So just 8 days ago. And then it was finally passed by both houses November 29th, today, or yesterday in Australia. So this was very, very fast. And one of the things that we know from a legal perspective that can happen easily is if something is rushed, then it can be easily torn down. While there may be good intent with this piece of legislation, it may not be well thought out and reasoned. On the other hand, here in Canada, we had a petition we served on the Canadian government in 2021. And then they basically said to us in a response, we had 1,000 signatures that we served, and this was for age and ID verification on all social media. You know, this is one of the big issues that we've been fighting for many years. And, you know, this is essentially what this bill has, or this act now has essentially done. It's essentially, I believe, I haven't read it yet. We're going to read it together. But what I think it's doing is it's going to force verification. We don't know what that verification is going to look like or any of the semantics here. And keep that in mind that this is, even though it was introduced for the first time a year ago, or sorry, a week ago, more than a week ago, they've been working on this for a while. They have had this kind of in discussions for a while. Now that may benefit this piece of legislation. It may not, but it scares me to think that the first reading was 8 days ago. And for a number of reasons that I'll lay out, you know, governments are not good at a lot of things. So as I was saying, we served a petition on the Canadian government for them to take action and for them to force social media companies to have age and ID verification. on all social media. And then they responded to us and they said, we're putting together an expert group of panelists, and they're going to basically, give their opinions. And they did. They put together a report, and that report then influenced the legislation that the Canadian government then proposed, and is now before Canadian government, the Canadian Parliament. And it basically does nothing as to what our request was, and it does nothing to what the majority of the sentiments were for these experts that were put together. And still here we are 3.5 years later, and nothing has been done about our petition. We still are kind of pushing forward for these issues, but this is very fast. This is very fast, and this is why it's scary, because it's basically, it feels like it's been rushed.
They could ban certain videos that people can watch, and say you can't post until you're 16 and over. That's a good one.
Just some of the reaction from teenagers in Australia.
And I am thinking that most Australian teenagers today are thinking that this is not going to be a good thing, depending on their age. And what the description of this says is that social media ban for people under 16. If you're 16 right now in Australia, what is your thought? Are you thinking that kids younger than you, and we would love to hear from you guys, are kids younger than you going to be better off as a result of this? And we don't know. I mean, ultimately, we won't know. But what about kids that are on social media that are even younger, that are 12, 13? And I will tell you, I have had firsthand experience with a family member that has been harmed on social media, was extorted from a predator. And I still take the position that an outright ban for children on social media is not a good thing. Well, that sounds very extreme. There are so many benefits that I think outweigh the risks on social media that is executed well. Now, let me back that up. I don't believe that any child right now should be on TikTok, Instagram, anywhere pretty much on social media. I don't believe that at all. But with ideal social media, the way that we are building 65 Square, where everyone is verified and there's actual accountability, and there's systems in place to kind of address the problems with social media. Social media today won't address these problems. Social media today is built on advertising, built on the backs of shareholders. And that's one of the major problems with social media today, is that we have social media and its sole purpose is to generate profit. And that is a huge problem. So with that in mind, let's keep going here. But I'm thinking my initial instincts are the majority of Australian teens right now are kind of scared for this.
Social media giants like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and X have 1 year to enforce the ban. Australia's Prime Minister said the ban would give children a childhood and give their parents some peace of mind. But critics...
Give kids a childhood. Whose responsibility, first of all, is it to give kids a childhood? And is social media going to stop that? And what I know from watching a couple of these news pieces is that a platform like YouTube is going to be excluded from this. And I don't know why, but I guess we'll find out. We're going to look at the legislation in a minute.
Including some you just heard from at the age of 16 or under, warned that the move could have unintended consequences. Let's turn to CBC's Mark Carcasol, who's been following this breaking news story for us. So, Mark, how is this going to work? But also, what are the motivations behind this new law?
As far as how it's going to work, that's a question a lot of people are asking. And I think it's a question that hasn't really been settled yet. And that's part of the reason why social media companies have a year to work this out. And there's a lot of onus on them. They would be the ones responsible for making sure kids under the age of 16 do not have accounts on their various platforms. And if they don't, they could face fines up to $50 million Australian, which equates to about 45.5 million Canadian. In terms of the motivations behind it, as you mentioned, they want to give children a childhood. They worry that social media gets kids addicted to their screens, gets them exposed to scammers and predators. That's the way they're taking it, and that's the way many proponents of this bill are.
All really good motivations to build a piece of legislation like this. And yet I still believe, and this is my personal opinion, I don't think I think I'll speak for us at our management level. I know that there is a wide variety of opinions on issues like this. I can tell you on our advocacy team, a team that's dedicated to making changes like this is a good thing for them. You know, we want to kind of push these issues forward. But is this the right way? I think when we started our advocacy team and pushing for changes like this, we knew that it was something that could have a real effect on the landscape of social media if we were to kind of be successful with age and identity verification. But what Australia has done is gone one step further. And that's really, you know, the scary part of this.
Are looking at it, the benefits, but there are a lot of people criticizing it who say that it puts them at privacy risks because they're going to have to identify themselves as adults in some way. It would take away parents' authority. It would drive kids to the dark web. There's also a real concern there about isolating kids.
Now, these are some of our concerns. As an organization, we don't want to take measures that are going to put kids at risk more. And vulnerable groups, people that are autistic or have issues socializing, or people that just are antisocial, kids that are antisocial. While yes, it's great to kind of like push them to be out in the world and to, you know, face their fears, what does this take away from them is the question. And we don't know the answer to that as society, because for the last, I don't know, 20 years, we've been living with social media. We've been understanding social media in our lives on a regular basis and adapting to it. And we built a device. As society, we built a device to kind of have that experience in our pockets at all times. So suddenly now we're going to yank that away from kids. Now, I really hate the idea that people like Meta and Mark Zuckerberg are making arguments about how this could be taking away people's freedom of speech. That's one of the main arguments that they have made for laws like this and preventing laws like this coming into effect in the US right now. They make these arguments about it's going to take away people's right to free speech. Mark Zuckerberg has censored people, has been a tyrant of propaganda himself. His platforms and the platforms that he fosters basically churn out nothing except for content that's good for their platform only. And they put their foot on the neck of things that are not good for their platform. So, yeah, that drives me nuts hearing these kinds of arguments from people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and Jason, whatever his name is, from Snapchat. You know, these platforms thrive on divisiveness, on fake information, misinformation, disinformation, getting people divided, getting people hating stuff. That's what they thrive on because it drives engagement on their platform and it keeps people there, and those eyeballs turn into money.
And Suicide Prevention Australia put out a statement about all this, calling the measure reckless, asking why it's being rushed through. While we acknowledge the challenges associated with online platforms, this legislation fails to consider the positive aspects of social media. They say social media provides vital connections for many young Australians, allowing them to access mental health resources, peer support networks, and a sense of community. Cutting off this access risks exacerbating feelings of loneliness and isolation. And that's a concern being expressed by many in Australia. And
yeah, I mean, these are valid concerns, and what it is that drives people to social media in the first place, which is feeling community, feeling like, there is digital friends that got your back, and that there is people out there that understand you. Cutting that off from kids is likely going to put kids at risk.
Around the world, really, because this could serve as a template for other countries in the future. Here is Australian social media expert Susan Grantham with her take on it.
These issues at the centre of the reason why we need to make change in the social media space aren't really simple issues. And what I mean there is that we have got young people's lives at stake, and a blanket ban is not going to resolve those issues.
Yes, absolutely. So a blanket ban affects everyone. And how does it affect people? And I can tell you that there are a lot of comments of people from a wide variety of places that I've looked at. In the US, we've taken a look at verification laws that are at different stages, and we've taken a look at like comments from like the commentary period, from like the general feedback phase of legislation. And most citizens of the US support protecting kids online, but we also know that they're already very scared to kind of think about what this means for them, because they then have to verify. And how do they do that? And people are afraid for their privacy. And these are things that we have taken into account in building our own social media platform. So 65 Square has been built from the ground up with verification first and foremost. This is what makes our social media platform special, is verification. And then what also makes it special is that it addresses a wide variety of issues. These social media platforms will just conform. They will not adapt to what the landscape should be. So Susan here is making a great point.
And the social media companies seem to agree with that. They seem to agree with anything, obviously, that goes against this plan because there is money at stake here and a lot of work that they would have to put in. But keep in mind, too, that a lot of them are also not ruling out legal challenges to this. So this could be more than a year before it's implemented.
Now, off the top, we heard some response from teenagers in Australia. Generally, what are the people who would be directly affected by this saying?
Well, you heard those ones off the top who mentioned that maybe there could be some measures, but not a total blanket ban. And then others are saying, you can go ahead and try to ban us from using it. We'll just find ways anyway.
Oh, yeah, they'll find ways. But listen to what this girl is saying here. The one, I think, on the right.
They could like ban certain videos that people can watch and like say you can't post until you're 16 and over.
So her thinking, the thinking of this girl, I mean, she looks like she's 16, 17. Her thinking that the only risk to deal with is about content and about a child being able to post. And I can tell you there are maybe 10 different types of risks for children, even teenagers on the internet. And these are just maybe two of them, 2 of 10 major types of risks. And, teenagers like this are going to have tunnel vision. They're going to have tunnel vision to whatever it is that they're thinking is the problem for themselves. But I don't think that, we are really going to start hearing from kind of young people making these kinds of arguments that address the majority of these kinds of issues. Let's see where else this goes.
Try to ban us from using it. We'll just find ways anyway.
We all know that social media isn't good for us, but it is hard to get off of it because, once again,
addiction, social media addiction is one of those 10 types of major risks. And, this is rightly so talking about this 16-year-old female from Australia.
It's really deeply ingrained in our society and how we interact with other people. In order to achieve these effects, we should take it upon ourselves to regulate our own personal social media usage rather than being forced off of it.
Now, that's kind of interesting, and I don't know where or how young people might regulate themselves. I think, if anything, teenagers are not really known for good self-regulation in society when it comes to anything. Whether it's getting up for school in the morning or eating good foods or anything, trusting young people to kind of do what's good for you is actually, it feels kind of like a joke, although I don't want to kind of belittle this person's opinion. It just doesn't feel like it's a sensible argument to make.
They say that if you don't, kids will find
our society and how we interact with other people. In order to achieve these effects, we should take it upon ourselves to regulate our own personal social media usage rather than being forced off of it.
They say that if you don't, kids will find ways around it. And there is a precedence for that. France tried to enact last year similar legislation for kids 15 and under. And they found that half of the kids that were falling under this umbrella were just using VPNs and connecting to different regions to get around that anyway. So they'll always find a way.
So that's an interesting perspective as well. What is it that someone that is faced with this ban, what are they going to do if they're kind of addicted to their phone, they're addicted to social media? What are they going to do to access social media? This reporter says, oh, they may access the dark web. And I don't really, I understand why one would think that, but I don't think most kids are kind of be in that boat. I think the high percentage of students or kids are going to be kind of like just not really navigating the internet like that. Or maybe not savvy enough. I mean, I know kids are really tech savvy, but I think most are not going to kind of go out of their way to go onto the dark web and to kind of try and back. But keep in mind, if there is sort of this ban that goes into effect, in a year when it's supposed to, what does the landscape of social media actually look like? Is it that social media companies will go abroad with their technology and basically launch verification on their platform in every single jurisdiction? I don't think so. And we've seen this already with companies like Pornhub. Pornhub are basically encouraging people to go on VPNs. They're encouraging people to bypass legislation that has been passed in certain states in the US. They have, been an active participant in basically people sidestepping the law. So what we kind of know is that there's a lot of complexity here, especially when we kind of think about the technology side. And us as a technology company, eventually, when we kind of are faced with this choice of, are we going to allow kids on our platform under 16? I mean, we will, make a choice, legally speaking, to obviously follow the law. And will we be able to do this in certain jurisdictions? Absolutely. And one of the reasons is because when someone signs up, they need to sign up with a passport. They need to sign up. Whether or not they're a kid or not is irrelevant. Kids can have passports. My child had a passport at age 10. And that's one of the reasons why we chose and landed on passport as the main mechanism to do verification. And it's only part of our verification system, but ID verification has to be done right. And we know that, and that's why we developed this technology. We are extracting data directly from the chip in the passport. Somebody's name, their date of birth, their age, etc. That is something we can safely do without doing what Elon Musk wants, which is having a picture of your passport sent over to him. I would much rather be faced with scanning the chip in my passport and extracting only data that's needed rather than sending Elon Musk my passport to have a verification check mark. That is not okay, in my view. So this is really like what we're seeing and hearing from different places. Let's see about another piece. Let's see if we can. Oh, South China Morning Post. I wonder what there's. So hopefully we'll get some different perspective here. If you're just joining,
Australia's parliament passed a social media.
If you're just joining, we're talking about Australia's ban for kids under the age of 15. And as you may or may not know, we are building our own social media platform. We're a nonprofit building the world's healthiest social media platform called 65 Square. And our mission is to reduce risks for children and vulnerable people online. And let's see what
media ban for children under the age of 16. The law is one of the world's toughest regulations targeting big tech and comes amid concerns over the negative effects of social media on children.
Parents can have a different discussion with their young ones a different discussion that will result in better outcomes and less harm for young.
Better outcomes. I don't know that they have any data to support this. Like, I don't know that these decisions from Australia are based on solid scientific evidence. And that's one of the other scary things about this is that, you know, if we're just making visceral decisions about how we believe something should happen, I mean, that's not good. If we're taking a look at an evidence-based approach, this is probably a little bit more healthier.
Australians. Platforms now have a social responsibility to ensure the safety of our kids is a priority for them.
Now, obviously, we haven't taken a look at the legislation yet, but I think maybe that might be a misnomer here. But I'll leave the Prime Minister here to kind of have his opinion on what this legislation might do, and we'll actually look at the facts in a few minutes.
We're making sure that mums and dads can have that different conversation today and in future days. We've got your back is our message to Australian parents. One of the issues we're dealing with here, some of it is social harm and some of the bullying that can occur as well. I've met with parents who've lost and buried their child. It's devastating. We can't, as a government, hear those messages from parents and say it's too hard.
The law forces tech giants, from Instagram and Facebook owner Meta to TikTok, to stop minors from logging in. Tech companies that violate the ban will face fines of up to 49.5 million Australian dollars. According to some polls, most Australians support the bill, but others say social media responsibility should lie with parents, not the government.
I don't think it's a good thing, really, because I think that it's not going to stop it, and also the government's taking control of things that is parents' responsibility.
Now, this is where this argument fails, in that we have obviously harmful things on the internet that people are exposed to on a regular basis. And if someone is at risk and being harmed, does government have a responsibility to do something about it? And I would say yes. And what should they do then is the question. But we have typically a drinking age. You know, most civilized countries have a drinking age of, 18 or older, 19 or older. In the US, it's most places it's 21 or older. We don't allow kids for a reason to walk into a store to purchase alcohol, or here in Canada to go in and purchase cannabis, or to go in and, for instance, purchase pornography, a magazine, for instance, if those still exist. I don't know that they do, but you can't say that all of this responsibility lies on the parents, because it doesn't. It lies on, we have several stakeholders here. We have government, we have parents, we have regular citizens that may be affected here, and we also have the tech companies who should also have a voice here, although a very minimal one. Because what they do today creates harm. So they have proven themselves to not be able to govern themselves as a whole, as an industry.
Because parents are going to keep still using their social media, aren't they? And their kids are going to be watching them doing it. So what's the point, really?
Well, we don't know that. I mean, who knows what parents might do as a result of this legislation? They might take more of an initiative of allowing allowing their kids to kind of see them do something different, and they might model different behavior. Perhaps the majority of parents won't do that, but we really don't know because this is obviously not scientific based. This is not based on any scientific findings. And I really, I'm afraid to look at the legislation because I think there's going to be several legal challenges that we're going to be seeing against this legislation.
I think that's a great idea because social media for kids is not really appropriate. Sometimes they can have a look something that they shouldn't. So I think we should really not have an access for, children's or
It's a great idea in theory, but is it something that executes very well?
kids that underage.
Young Australians affected by the ban say they would resort to finding loopholes.
I'll be annoyed. I'd like to keep using it. It'd be a weird feeling to not have it and be able to talk to all my friends at home. Yeah, I'll find a way. And so
That's most kids in Australia today. They'll find a way. And that's the scary part again, too. Like, that's going to create a disconnect between parents and child, or parents and legislators. Both are kind of valid, but I think parent and child thing is a bigger thing. Now we have children that are sneaking around their parents' backs to try and get some kind of fulfillment from social media. What I don't think, and I don't know for sure yet, what I don't think is that legislation is not going to address gaming platforms, although I don't know that for sure. I'm assuming that it's not going to address gaming platforms, but we'll find out.
all my other friends.
I honestly think that they shouldn't ban it, and that I think that they should just put restrictions on it instead of banning it altogether. Because teens, they're just gonna go behind their parents' backs, or the parents are just gonna be chill about it. They're gonna get onto it somehow.
A trial enforcement period will start in January, with the ban expected to take effect in November 2025.
Wow, so November 2025 is when this is expected to come in.
The bill sets up Australia as a test case amid a growing number of governments that have legislated or plan to legislate a social media age restriction.
All right, so this is that is just one of many issues happening today on social media. And as I said, this was a very rushed piece of legislation, although we've been hearing about it for a while now. It's been over a year that we've been hearing this talk about this legislation coming in. So we knew that this was coming. So even though this was introduced and read, this bill, on November 21st, we can safely say that it was a while in the making. Let's take a look at the bill. All right, I'm just trying to get all these settings right. trying to organize my windows. I have too many windows open now. All right, so this is the legislation, the Online Safety Amendment, Social Media Minimum Age Bill 2024. So it says 2022 on here. I'm assuming, so yeah, the Online Safety Act came into effect in 2021. So I think this is going to amend, obviously, that piece of legislation. So this is not, as I said, this is not something new in Australia. They've been talking about it for a while. We've got some preamble stuff here. This act is the Online Safety Amendment. Okay, announcement. Schedule day after this act receives royal Schedule 1. There are age restrictions for certain social media platforms. A provider of such a platform must take reasonable steps to prevent children who have not reached a minimum age from having accounts. Reasonable steps, probably not defined here. Section 5. Age restricted. So this is adding to the Online Safety Act. It's at the end of section 4. It's going to add this. And then at section 5, it's going to insert. So maybe I should pull up the Online Safety Act. Actually, no, let's just look at this. Age-restricted social media platform has the meaning given by section 63C. Oh, let's go find. All right, let's go find it. Online Safety Act. All right, here we go. So if it's that, providers of certain kinds of social media must take reasonable steps. All right. For the purposes of this act, age-restricted social media platform means an electronic service that satisfies the following conditions. The sole purpose or a significant purpose of the service is to enable online social interaction between two or more end users. The service allows end users to link to or interact with some or all. So this would be like on YouTube linking to a Discord. So if it allows you to link to a Discord to interact with other users, that basically makes you an age-restricted social media platform. The service allows end users to post material on the service. Such other conditions, if any, are set out in the legislative rules. By an electronic service specified in the legislative rules does not include a service mentioned in subsection 6. An electronic service specified note 1, online social interaction does not include, for example, online business interaction. So a business platform like Amazon. An age-restricted social media platform may be, but is not necessarily a social media service under section 13. Specification class. The purposes of online and social interaction includes online interaction that enables end users to share material for social purposes. Social purpose does not include business purposes. In determining whether the conditions set out in subparagraph, disregard any of the following purposes. The provision of advertising material on the service. Determining a condition set out. Making legislative rules specifying an electronic service. Seek advice from the commissioner. Must have regard to that advice. And may seek advice from any other authorities or agencies of the Commonwealth that minister considers relevant and may have regard to such advice. An electronic service is not an age-restricted social media platform if none of the material on the service is accessible to or delivered to one or more end users in Australia. So you're basically not an age-restricted service if you don't provide access to Australia. So Facebook isn't an age-restricted social media platform if it doesn't provide, so if it just cuts off access to Australia. That's what this is. That basically means that it's exempt, which means that, of course, that kind of opens the door to children accessing the service through backdoor means. A VPN is one example, but there are other examples that I think could be said here. Civil penalty. Civil penalty is 30,000 units. A provider of an age-restricted platform must take reasonable steps to prevent age-restricted users having accounts with the age-restricted social media platform. Information that must not be collected. A provider of an age-restricted social media platform must not collect information for the purposes of complying with 63D or 60. Must not. A provider of an age-restricted social media platform must not collect information for the purposes that include the purpose of complying with 63D. Must not collect information before making legislative rules specifying a kind of information. 63D refers to civil penalties. So you want age-restricted services, but you don't want them to collect information? A provider of age-restricted social media platform must not collect government-issued identification material or accredited service for the purposes of complying with Section 63D, or for that purposes that include the purpose of complying with Section 63D. Oh. So they want to do this with biometrics solely, but the service can't collect the information. I don't necessarily get this, but I can tell you right now, this is gonna hit some legal challenges, guaranteed. In this section, government issued material includes identification issued by the Commonwealth, a state or territory issued, blah, blah, blah. Digital ID. So wait, you want to ban kids, but then you don't want to force people to use government issued ID, and they must not collect information, and there's a penalty for that. That seems a little wonky. So what are we relying on for verification? And this is why I think this is going to be struck down. Information collected for purposes, including taking reasonable steps to comply. If an entity holds personal information about an individual that was collected for the purpose or for purposes including the purpose of taking reasonable steps to prevent age-restricted users having accounts with an age-restricted social media platform, uses or discloses the information. Otherwise, then, the purpose for determining whether or not the individual is an age-restricted user. All right, so hold on a second here. Information collected for the purposes including taking reasonable steps to comply with age restriction. If an entity holds personal information, uses or discloses the information, otherwise use or disclose the information. So basically they're creating a penalty. They're trying to create some framework here for privacy, which doesn't really make sense. Consent must be voluntary, informed, current, specific, unambiguous. So need to obtain consent. for the usage of that information or disclosing it to anyone else. If an entity holds personal information about an individual that was collected for the purposes or for purposes including taking reasonable steps to prevent age-restricted users having accounts with age, then the entity must destroy the information after using or disclosing it for the purposes for which it was collected. And if the entity does not destroy the information, the failure to destroy the information is taken or interfere with the privacy of that individual. If the entity does not so destroy the information, the failure to destroy the information is taken to be an interference with the privacy of the individual for the purposes of the Privacy Act 1988 and covered by Section 13 of that act. An act or practice that is interfered. Okay. So we've got some privacy. Likely that act is going to have its own penalties. Information gathering powers. Commissioner may obtain information about compliance. Compliance notice. So basically like asking the platforms to this is basically for the social media companies that the commissioner, this digital commissioner, will be able to essentially demand from the social media platforms information, and failure which 500 penalty units. 500 penalty units. The hell is a penalty unit? They don't want to specify a dollar figure. Platform notifications. Liability for damages. Information commissioner. So the information commissioner can, make these kinds of demands for privacy information, and they can't be held liable for that. Review of social media minimum age framework. Within 2 years after the day Section 63 takes effect in accordance with 63E, the minister must cause to be conducted an independent review of the operation. So that's good. They're going to review their mistakes. Age Discrimination Act. And that's it. I mean, obviously that's not it, because what we have on the right here is the actual Online Safety Act, or whatever. I don't know what it's called. Yeah, Online Safety Act 2021. So I wonder if all this stuff in yellow is what's coming into effect. Maybe not. All right, so let me see. Yeah, so this doesn't include the current amendments. I download that as a PDF. All right, so let me take that off here. And I'm going to get ChatGPT's help here. All right. So in summary, the outline. So what's happening here is that this is legislation that affects minimum age for setting up an account on social media. When someone is setting up the account, that's the time when restriction has to come in. Now, what I don't think it does ask ChatGPT to analyze this quickly. This is for someone setting up an account. So, okay, so apparently there's provisions in here that apply to new account setups and existing accounts. Platforms must implement age verification mechanisms to prevent users under 16 from creating new accounts. Verification systems must comply with privacy protections, avoiding the collection of sensitive data like government. How is it they're suggesting to do verification? Emphasize reasonable measures for age verification while maintaining strict privacy protections. They are what they do look like strict privacy protections. Here's how the legislation suggests or restricts verification. Alternative age assurance methods. Platforms are encouraged to use non-intrusive and innovative methods to verify users' ages, such as AI-based analysis or behavior or content, age estimation algorithms. It's what we do, and we're actually doing that on device. But that's when someone logs in, and then we need to have something. User attestations of guardian consent for minors. Wow. Suggested verification methods. Token-based system tied to age verification without storing personal data. I'm gonna put this up on screen here. But in my opinion, I think that this is going to face legal challenge. I'm 100% positive. Knowing what I know, I'm almost positive they're going to face legal challenge, and this is going to go through the court system in Australia. Privacy-focused verification. And they're explicitly saying no government issued as a default. Platforms cannot require government issued IDs or accredited digital service as the sole means. Platforms must not collect. Platforms already collect beyond a boatload of information on people. Strictly necessary for age verification. Violations could lead to severe penalties. Reasonable steps. Platforms could require age declarations during, we do age declarations right now and it doesn't work. Check here if you're check here if you're under 18. Check here if you're over 18. Flexibility for platforms. The e-safety commissioner is tasked with issuing guidelines for reasonable steps that platforms should take. These guidelines aim All right, so that's what we're looking at here. And as I said, as we've heard already, this is likely not a good thing. And in our opinion, restricting or banning children from accessing something that they already have access to is going to be a problem. It's going to create problems. It's going to create problems not only in the household, but it's also going to create problems for the law. It's going to create problems for enforcement. It's going to create problems for the tech companies. And we're going to see guaranteed a legal battle. Punch it out in the Australian legal system for a while. I doubt this is going to come into effect when they say it is. And they're saying that it's going to come into effect in 1 year. I doubt that. I highly doubt it. And as we already saw, looking at the legislation, they can restrict. They can, Facebook, Meta, Instagram can restrict users in that country, and then basically allow them to go and do, they can allow them to set up an account or access their accounts by means other than, it doesn't make any sense. If you're going to say one thing is one thing and then it's not something just because they don't offer it in your country is a huge problem. There's lots of problems with this legislation. I am Jason with Defend. And if you've enjoyed this analysis and this discussion, please comment below. Let us know. If you want to help bring about positive change, send us a message, get on our website, HelpUsDefend.com, and let us know you want to volunteer, you want to donate, you want to share our content to help bring about positive change. And if you're in Australia, please let us know what you're thinking about this and how it affects you. And we'll see you next time.